Lena Marsh had been a photographer at the Aldrin Courier-Herald for 11 years, long enough to know the sound of the newsroom on a bad day. It was not loud. It was the particular quiet of people watching something happen and deciding, one by one, whether to pretend they hadn't seen it. That Tuesday morning in late October, the quiet started around 8:15, when Dale Voss sent a draft to the managing editor's shared folder and CC full editorial staff. The subject line read, "Background piece, new EIC appointment, sourcing for review." Lena was pulling her memory card from her camera bag when her laptop pinged. She almost didn't open it. She had a city council photo assignment at 10, and she was already behind. She opened it. It took her 4 paragraphs to understand what she was reading. The piece was about Miriam Ossieholt, who had been the Courier-Herald's editor-in-chief for exactly 22 days. It was framed as a profile, a recounting of her career, appointment, the circumstances that had led the publisher to select her over the paper's 2 internal candidates. But the framing did something particular to the facts. A regional press award Miriam had won in Atlanta was described as a local citation, a 6-year tenure running a mid-sized daily in Columbus, where she had doubled digital subscriptions and won a National Investigative Reporting prize, was summarized in one subordinate clause, and the piece's central thesis, stated gently but plainly in the 4th paragraph, was that the board had selected Miriam under pressure to demonstrate commitments, rather than on merit, that her record, while creditable, was not the obvious choice a purely credentials-based search might have produced. Dale Voss had been at the Courier-Herald for 19 years. He had applied for the editor-in-chief role himself. He had not gotten it. Lena set her camera bag down. Across the floor, she could see Miriam through the glass wall of her corner office. Miriam was on the phone, one hand resting flat on her desk, posture the same unhurried vertical it always was. She did not look like a woman who had read the email. She may not have yet. Lena watched her for a moment, the level shoulders, the quiet of her, and looked back at her screen. She read the piece again. Then she opened a second browser window and began to check the sourcing. The Columbus Daily's circulation figures were public. The national prize was a matter of record. The regional award Voss had described as a local citation was listed on the Southern Regional Press Association's website as a first-place honor in investigative journalism, a category that drew entries from 6 states. Lena found it in under 2 minutes. She sat with that for a moment, her hands in her lap, and listened to the newsroom's careful, watching quiet. At 9 o'clock, Miriam was called into the conference room. Lena could see it from her desk, could see the managing editor, Frank Heller, closing the door, Voss settling into a chair across from Miriam, with the particular ease of a man who believed the room was already his. Lena stood up and walked to the glass. She was not the only one. Inside Miriam had a folder. She had, it appeared, prepared. She did not raise her voice. That was the first thing Lena noticed, that even from the hallway, with the sound muffled to nothing, could read the room by posture. And Miriam's posture said she had not come to defend herself. She had come to answer questions. There was a difference, and Miriam seemed to understand it clearly, and Voss seemed not to. He gestured at something on his laptop. She opened her folder and placed a document on the table. She said something. She turned to a second page and laid it beside the first. Frank Heller leaned forward. Miriam pointed to something on the page, then sat back, her hands folded, and waited. The meeting lasted 31 minutes. Lena was back at her desk when Miriam walked out. She did not go back to her office. She went to the coffee station at the end of the room, poured a cup, and stood there for a moment, looking out the window at the street below. Back was to the floor. Lena watched her and thought about the draft on her screen and about the 11 years she had spent at this paper and about whether she was the kind of person who was going to do anything about what she'd found, or whether she was going to pick up her camera bag and go cover the city council meeting and let the afternoon sort itself out. She picked up her phone and called the Southern Regional Press Association's main number. A woman answered. Lena asked her to confirm the category and the geographic scope of the first-place investigative award given in 2017. The woman confirmed it in under a minute. Lena thanked her and hung up. Then she got up and walked to Frank Heller's office. She did not have a speech. She brought her laptop and she showed him the awards listing and the circulation figures for the Columbus paper, sourced and timestamped, and she said, "I think the piece has a sourcing problem. I found these in about 15 minutes. I think you should look at them before this goes anywhere." Frank Heller looked at the screen for a long time. He did not say anything right away. When Lena came back out, Marcus Webb, a reporter who had covered City Hall for 8 years and had, as far as Lena knew, never said a word to her about anything personal, was standing in the hallway. He had his own laptop under his arm. "I found 3 more," he said. "Columbus Prize," he said. "It was a commentation. It was a first-place national award. I called the organization." "I know," Lena said. "Going in. I'll come with you." They went in together. Behind them after a moment came Delia Osi, the copy desk chief, who had said nothing all morning, but had apparently been doing her own reading. And then, from across the room, slowly, a young reporter, a 26-year-old named Tom Calloway, who had been at the Courier-Herald for 8 months, and who Lena had spoken to maybe 4 times, got up from his chair and followed. Frank Heller's office, which held 5 people uncomfortably, held 6 people in silence for the better part of an hour. He asked questions. They showed him what they'd found. Marcus had printed his sourcing. Delia had annotated the draft itself, not editorially, just factually, checking each claim against the public record, the award, the circulation, the length of Miriam's tenure, the scope of the Columbus paper's reach, the national prize. Every characterization in Voss's piece that a reader might have taken as a judgment of credentials was, when set beside the actual record, either incomplete or wrong in a direction that moved only one way. At 10:45, Frank Heller reached Dale Voss and told him the piece was being pulled from the queue pending a sourcing review. At 11, he reached the publisher. Lena did not hear that call, but she saw Frank's face when he came back out of his office. And she had been a photographer long enough to read a face. At 11:30, Dale Voss collected his jacket and his laptop bag and left the building. The HR director arrived 12 minutes later and spent 40 minutes in a closed room with Frank Heller. Miriam Osi came out of her office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She walked to the center of the editorial floor and stood there until people looked up from their screens, which did not take long. The room that had been quietly watching all morning was by then quietly waiting. She did not talk about Voss. She did not name what had happened in the way a person might have been entitled to name it. She said that she had been given something that morning she had not expected. Not the thing that had been put in front of her, what came after it. And that she wanted the room to know she had seen it. She said she had come to the Courier-Herald because she believed a newspaper was only as good as the people who chose, every day, to tell the truth. She said she thought they were those people. She said she still thought so. Then she went back to her office. Lena sat at her desk for a while after that and did not immediately pick up her camera bag. She thought about 8:15 that morning, and the ping of the email, and the almost of not opening it. She had been at this paper for 11 years. She had photographed city council meetings and car accidents, and the faces of people being handed bad news by doctors. And she had always believed she was good at her job, which was to see things clearly and record them without flinching. It turned out that was harder to do from behind a camera than she had realized. It was harder in a room full of people deciding whether to look. She had looked. Marcus had looked. Delia had looked. And Tom Calloway, who had been here 8 months and had nothing to gain, gotten up from his chair and walked across the room. The publisher issued a written apology to Miriam Osi that evening, delivered by hand, and announced the opening of an internal sourcing standards audit covering the past 18 months of the paper's editorial operations. Dale Voss did not return to the building. His employment status was listed in the brief staff notice that went out the following morning as under HR review. Miriam's name was on the masthead. It had been there for 22 days. It would be there for years after. Lena thought about that. The masthead, the name, the ordinary Tuesday it had taken to earn it a second time, and decided it was the kind of thing she was glad she had not slept through. She picked up her camera bag. There was still half a day left.